Hello, creeps. Welcome to another episode of The Mortuary. I'm your host, Morbid Tuna, and this is where we talk about horror films and related geekery. Today, in fact, we are going to talk about related geekery rather than an actual horror film. Until now, I've posted only reviews, but today is a special day. Today is Friday the 13th. The only Friday the 13th of 2025, an extra special Friday the 13th, because Friday, June 13th, as most fans know, is Jason's in-canon actual birthday. So, if I'm not reviewing a film, what am I doing? I'm so glad you asked. Today, being that we are honoring Friday the 13th, this year, by the way, marks 45 years since the original was released. 45 years! Still awesome, still a great flick. A film which, of course, kicked off a franchise that went farther than any of the original creators ever would have imagined. Friday the 13th became a cultural icon. Even people who've never seen a Friday the 13th film know that hockey mask. They know the sound effect, even if they think it's cheep, 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 ha, ha, which it isn't. That franchise became so immensely popular. And of course, ever since the franchise really gained steam in the mid-80s, fans have been debating about the origins of Jason Voorhees. Just as a bit of a crash course, the later versions of Jason, in the later sequels, he is clearly a walking corpse. He is literally rotting. You can see bones poking out. He's very clearly not a human being. He is an undead monster. No debate there. Originally, Jason was supposed to just be a gimmick. At the end of the first film, little dead boy Jason comes out of the water, pulls the girl in, and oh, big final jump scare. But as of the first sequel, when Jason first took up his machete and started his long career in ending people's lives, the director of the first sequel had to retcon the character a little bit, because originally Jason was supposed to be dead. That was the reason for his mother's killing spree. By the way, I'm not going to bother with spoiler alerts. It's been 45 years. Come on, guys. So his mother dies at the end of the first one. When the director of the sequel decided to make a sequel, he had to retcon that somehow, because Mrs. Voorhees is clearly dead. Her head gets cut off at the end. She's done. So how are they going to make another killer? Well, he decided to make it so Jason never actually drowned. At least, that's what the script tells us. His body was never recovered from the lake. So where is it? What happened to him? What appears to have happened is he has been living off in the woods in this ramshackle old shanty that either he put together or he found from some previous occupant and just took it over or whatever. But the script says he's this kind of wild boy mutant, like a backwoods homicidal maniac, more like something you might see in Wrong Turn. This like homicidal woodsman running around, surviving off animals and plants and killing anybody who comes into his little territory. That's the original concept of the adult Jason. At some point then, between that and him being a walking corpse, at some point he must have died to then turn into this undead monster. That brings me to the topic of this little geek fest. Something that's been debated among the fans since forever, and that is, when exactly did Jason become undead? Did he die when he got that machete through his clavicle all the way down to here, and after that he rose and was an undead monster? That's at the end of part 2. At the end of part 3, he gets hanged, but then pulls himself up by the rope and pulls his mask off for a moment. Did he just come back from the dead there? A few minutes later, the final girl in part 3 embeds the blade of an axe right in his head, and he goes down, and he stays down. Is that when he died? At the beginning of part 4, when you see his inert corpse hauled off to the morgue, he then revives in the morgue, kills a couple of hospital employees, and heads right back out to the bush to get back on his killing spree. So, when do I think was the moment that the human Jason died for real? I think it's at the end of part 3. That axe in the head was the last thing that human Jason experienced. By the way, I want to add, I don't think Jason was just a human. To me, there was always something at least vaguely supernatural about Jason. It just became more and more pronounced as the series went on. Much like Michael Myers from Halloween, he's a human, but there's some evil force that's backing him up, that allows him to recover from these injuries that would kill normal people, or that allows him to be extra stealthy. That's the force that enabled him to fight through the pain of his chopped shoulder at the end of Part 2, pull the machete out, and begin his killing spree of Part 3. That bone must have somehow knit together like a mutant healing ability or something. That same evil force intervened when he got hanged. Yeah, he's got a great bull neck, and he's ridiculously strong. But again, I think something was helping him just stay on this side of death. But that axe in the head was just a bit too much for it. He goes down, and he stays down. Now, yes, he gets up in Part 4 and carries on. Why do I think now he's undead? Here are some reasons. He dies at the end of Part 3. Part 4 opens with him lying there. When he died, he had relatively normal skin tone, normal-looking fingernails, and now he's lying there, his skin is a blotchy grayish, and his fingernails have turned black. Big indication that person is dead. He ends up at the hospital, gets up, you see the one little wisp of breath coming out of him when they put him in the freezer. Does that mean he's breathing again? I don't think so. A corpse's last breath does come back out of it at some point, and that, I think, was the last little bit that was left in his lungs as he reanimated, now actually undead, the breath he no longer needs. Later in the film, not only does he seem to be completely insensible to repeated poundings on the head with a claw hammer, which even tough as nails living Jason would have had some trouble with, but when he grabs an intended victim's leg from under the cellar stairs, she hacks at his wrist. You can see the flesh parts, the skin breaks, you can see the meat underneath, but it doesn't bleed. No blood comes out. If he was alive, it should be bleeding. And again, near the end, the very same intended victim this time splits Jason's hand in half with a machete. Right down to the wrist almost. Not only does Jason not scream and react in pain, rather he looks at his hand in a sort of a strange fascination, like it's interesting, but it doesn't really hurt. The blood is coming out, but it's oozing out. It's not being pumped, because there is no more heartbeat. He's already dead. Now, for those of you who will say, yes, Jason grunts and groans and reacts to some things that a living creature would react to, sure he does, and he moves with the same agility and speed as he did in the previous films, unlike the slow, lumbering hunk of rotting flesh that we know from the later films. But I would point out, he is freshly undead. He reanimated just now. He hasn't been buried. He hasn't been rotting for years. By the time hulking undead Jason is revealed in Part 6, he's literally brought back to life from the grave. He's been in that grave for years. He's been lying there rotting, and so he's not going to have the same agility. He's just, even with that supernatural power backing him up, it just can't get those dead limbs to move the way that the freshly undead one did before, of course, he was put down properly at the end of Part 4. So, what I'm saying is, Friday the 13th, the final chapter, which we all know, of course, is just Part 4, is the first appearance of Undead Jason. He's also, by the way, a fan favorite. The stuntman who played him, Ted White, was not a horror fan, but he needed a paycheck, and so he kind of effortlessly created what a lot of fans, including me, find to be one of the most terrifying versions of Jason. He combines the confidence and grace of Nick Castle's Michael Myers, aka The Shape, behind me here from the original Halloween, with the raw power and brutality of Gunnar Hansen's Leatherface from the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And what resulted was a new kind of slasher, something that doesn't even seem to feel pain anymore, something that doesn't even seem to need to breathe. He seems to be able to spend limitless amount of time underwater, or at least extensive periods of time underwater. So there you have it. That's my opinion as to when Jason Voorhees became undead. It's as of Friday the 13th, the final chapter, aka Part 4. As I've said, a fan favorite. Anyone who hasn't seen it, I very highly recommend it. Definitely one of the best of the entire series, even for no other reason than you get to see Crispin Glover doing this. Classic. It's an absolutely perfect 80s slasher, and I've always loved it. In fact, Friday the 13th, the final chapter, was my introduction to the series. They used to show them on TV on Saturdays on some American channel I could get with my aerial back home, and they showed that one at like 2 in the afternoon on a Saturday. I was a kid, it scared the crap out of me and made me a lifelong Friday the 13th fan. Well, folks, that's it for this very special episode of The Mortuary with Morbid Tuna. I'll be coming at you with a new review in just a couple of weeks. So, if you like what you've seen and heard here, click that like button, click the subscribe button, tell all your horror-loving friends to come on by and check out this little geek fest going on over here on YouTube. So until next time, this is Morbid Tuna at the Mortuary saying, slash you later.